So in my life, I've had to travel quite a bit for work, which for those who do, it can be a hard schedule, but it also means when you are on a small labs research stipend that you have a lot of unfettered access to backpacks, suitcases, bedding, all sorts of fun stuff. And when you have such a thing, nice sweaty T-shirt from someone is quite a good link to make a little doll out of.
Do you wanna admit that in public?
Absolutely not.
Be not alarmed at the frightful howls which you may hear. It's Svinga and binding the hands, feet, mouth, eyes, and heart key.
Among other things, and other parts of the body.
Stop it. Yeah, this is our doll magic, effigy magic episode. Proposed to us actually by a good friend Matt Venus, who was here not 10 episodes ago to discuss this excellent book, Installing the Effigy. And also brought on Kamden Cornell, whose book on pins and needles, a witch's book of puppetry and figure magic, is just out now. Or rather, the updated version through Cross Crow Books. And we're so happy to have them. It was so exciting. So, in fact, much like with our previous episode with Rebecca, so exciting that we just went into it and had to record the intro and post. So we just got right into it. It was just so much fun that we were like, let's just keep the conversation going. So fun to have the both of them. And also kind of fun on a meta level to have spoken about Matt's book fairly recently and now speaking more deeply into specifically dolls and puppets.
Yeah, for real. A nice part two to Matt's episode, really evolving on some of the techniques and really going in a fun direction with it.
Mm-hmm. And really, with this whole conversation, it's not just about like the standard stuff we could talk about, like, needing different herbs and materia into like whatever matrix you're using to make up like an effigy. We start off by talking about some of like the various ways you can deploy these things, what you can do with them, the positionality, like how it can be used for basically absolutely any magical technique you want. And the conversation actually ends up tapering off into witchcraft and ethics and kind of the difference between the inflation of like I'm the one in power and this is my magic, that I'm commanding the spirits versus realizing that you are also just but a speck, in the
Yeah.
broader ecology of things. So it's actually a really fun kind of meta conversation that I ended up in. But leave it to, of course, Matt and Camden to take us there. So very, very grateful for this and super excited to discuss it with you all. And if you'd like to discuss the book with us, as we have been, please remember to check us out at patreon.com/, the Frightful Howls. We have a bonus episode every month curated by and just for our patrons, a Discord server, a monthly live occult book club where we discuss a text of your choosing, in which you can also vote, in which you can definitely vote Matt and Camden's books, if that's what you like to do. So
That's right.
definitely include them. Yeah, yeah. And then, we got show notes for every episode, a whole tier of monthly group spell work from us on your behalf, and more.
Also, remember to give us a like, rating, and review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you might be listening to us. It helps us fight the demiurge of the algorithm.
You can also check out our services. Key offers personalized coaching in magic and mediumship, sorcery for hire, readings, custom talismans, oils, tools, and also coaching in Letterman.
That's right. Have a not only coaching, but a whole course coming out soon. So keep your eyes open for that.
Amazing, amazing. And I offer bulk and 5 readings. Can get your beans read. And both of us occasionally offer limited occult wares over on withcunningcommand.com. Keep your eyes. I guess by the time this is out, most of your expedite stuff is finished.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, then keep your eyes out for the expedite launch of 2026. It's massive.
Massive.
and and eventually even past that, the Mercury and Nutmeg Gold editions that will take a little bit longer to cook, but for good reasons.
Yeah, that's right. Really making them a alchemical love letter to the four previous editions and adding in some fun stuff that boosts existing versions for people who already have them. So this is a new, nice add-on, and we'll just offer everything with the upgrades all in one package for people who did not have a chance to get them in the previous years. And lastly, be sure to hit us up on social media. Svinga is at Dragon Cunning, and I am at Barnell.key.
So please allow us to give a warm welcome to Matthew Venus, the one, the only, and Spiritus Arcanum, and Kamden Cornell from Heart and Vine Apothecary. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. One of the things that I've always found really fun to do in general with like any notion of like doll magic or effigies or whatever like that is just the like, literal verticality of them. Like I feel like it's like just positioning them. Like one of my teachers, for example, like it's very common in the Balkans that we'll make them out of cloth and make them out of like if you have clay, obviously you can use clay, but like beeswax and soap are the primary ones. So it's always like how do you position them? Like do you put them upside down? Do you put them like on in front of an icon and then kneeling? Like do you make them like be fleeing from the spear of Saint George when he's slaying the dragon? That kind of thing. Like because you do tama, which are like the little I guess like the milagros, right? So there can be the kind of silver coat, like foot or eye that you want healed or like that. We didn't. It can look like that, or it can be beeswax. And so people take that, like offer it, and then from the church, and then they come back and then they melt it melt it down and make a little doll out of it. And so it's like, okay, this one is the one for healing foot ailments, so this one is the one for curing the evil eye, or this one is the one that we just had blessed as an evil eye thing that we now use as a decoy for ourselves against the evil eye, we make it into ourselves. But it's always about like positioning them. So like I find the whole notion of like, is the saint literally looking at it? Like, is the icon staring at it in Orthodox Church? Like, has it seen it? Like, was it veiled? Is it facing away from it? Like, so that God is not blessing it necessarily because you're turning away from Him is so fun. And I don't know, it's one of the joys of like going into an Orthodox Church in a village that is really known for magic and just seeing like, I see you. Like, I see what you did there. I see how you totally took the tamata and made it into something really nasty.
So what was it called? That word that you're saying basically for votive offerings?
Oh yeah, tama.
Like
So
a,
it's here.
basically just the same as essentially like a milagro.
Yeah, it's typically that's Greek. Tamata is a plural. Tama is the singular. So it's a votive offering, right? And then
Mm.
they're usually eyeballs or a person or like a foot. It's very similar to milagros, but
Yeah.
except we can make them in beeswax. So
Yeah.
a few years ago, Key and I were in Larnaca in Cyprus, which has the Church of Saint Lazarus, where Lazarus died a second time. There's like a story that he went to Cyprus and he lived out his natural lifespan after Jesus resurrected him, and he died there. And they over his tomb they built this beautiful Lazarus church. And we went there. You can go inside into the crypt where you can see his tomb, and people like tear off cloth and like put it to make it into a relic and bring it back. All kinds of things of that nature. Do they have his relics there? But because he died twice and because he was resurrected, like people will actually bring tamata there and be like, this is to resurrect my foot, like this is to put to death and bring back like my health in this way, or my marriage, my man is straying, so I'll do a little tama of a man and put it there. And it was just interesting to see like a full baby's head. It was probably for birth or some fertility thing that was there as like a little beeswax effigy, but someone had like in Greek like written a petition on it, and it was very clearly like facing like to await for the resurrection, which made me think of like, I wonder if that may be used for a healthy birth, right? Like to kind of literally arise out of the mother's body.
That's really cool. I love that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Of like creating the kind of offering thing that then you take and create like a doll from. That's really neat.
Yeah, because usually the votive offerings are like made out of metal. So because there's a huge host of like beeswax ones you can make, like you could in theory come back to the church after hours and take it back with you and melt it down. And people do, like especially for witchcraft.
Yeah.
Very
like
cool.
Even that being openly acknowledged by like the priest who is there. We're like,
we talked to him.
What's up with the baby? And he's like, oh yeah, they'll probably, take it and do what they will with it. Very hand wavy. He's like, if you know, you know. Which was quite fun. One of the things that I do really love about dolls and effigies and images in this way is just how versatile they can all be, up to and including like found objects. Like we all probably have that stick or that rock that we found where it's like that reminds me of such and such spirit, or that looks exactly like the problem that I'm trying to solve. And
Yeah.
so really going from just like the basest representation up to dolls that have complex loads of hundreds of herbs and powders and animal parts and people parts and all the fun nasty goodies that you can get in there to be fully inspirited. So I think just such a spectrum of different expressions of magic, including cross-culturally, like as a global mainstay, beyond just like the get a candle, bless it somehow and put some oil on it and it will do a thing. This is like one of the most not to go like full core shamanism direction, but like one of the core expressions of sympathetic magic cross-culturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a lot of things there that I think are interesting. I do like the found object element of being able to kind of work with that. One of the things that I talked about in Installing the Effigy is there's an exercise that is basically like a found object exercise. So you go forth kind of with with the intention of having materia present itself to you for the specific working. And you can do this in an urban environment. You can do it in a rural environment, whether it's plants that you come across or stones or sticks, or whether it's old bottle caps or a rusty piece of metal or something to that effect that kind of stands up and volunteers itself really as a materia that can be worked into the body of a fetish or an effigy. I think that there's something really kind of to that, like allowing things to present themselves. Plus, I mean, I'm a big fan. I do enjoy like assemblage art and things like that as well. And I think that's something that kind of inspired me towards that particular type of practice, along with, kind of like walking meditations and those types of things, like joining that together, right? Seeing what kind of found objects will just, present themselves, leaving the house and going forth as a sacred journey, whether it's in your own town or in the woods or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really interesting because, like, especially with this idea of finding things, is that it really exercises your ability to like creatively problem solve and creatively problem solve within a structure, right? So, like, we all have these traditions that we come from. We all have ways that we usually do things, but then something like you say stands up, and like, how do you work that into this working? Like, it really stretches this creative problem solving, which then also trains your brain to do it outside of magic, which I think a lot of people need to think about.
Right.
Like, we need to be doing magic all the time, sure, but there's also times that you don't need to use magic. You just need to creatively problem solve. Treating magic as like this thing that we highly respect and that we are deeply educated in, but also a chance to play. Like, I think that that's so fun. And I mean, that I'm a weird little clown, like an absurd clown person, but I mean, this idea of playing in these powerful circles, like, I don't know, it really lends itself to something that can change everything. I don't know, I kind of lost my scooter there for a second, but
I think that like that's a super valid point, and I'm a big proponent also of like play, because I think it is like this almost like dirty word that's associated with like childishness, because occultists are meant to be serious, academic, like
professional wizard, do not perform.
Yeah, professional wizard. Calcified fuckers up in a tower pointing their fingers down at the idiots below them. But there is a sacredness to play and creativity of the things, and I also think that that activates a part of our own mind and our openness to. It's an invitation in some cases, I feel like, to better understand the spirits around us in a lot of ways. I think that if you don't have a certain type of openness, I think that play to some extent, and whatever that means, right? I mean, but having a bit more of a creative, playful mind. And again, I think that this is for people that are artistic naturally, or maybe more creative. This comes naturally because I think a part of the creative process does have to involve play. That's how but that also, I think, can help us to develop better, I would say mediumistic abilities and better abilities to actually engage with
Mhm.
spirits in different ways by not locking ourselves into specific types of like mindsets and modalities, but opening ourselves up to alternate ways of experiencing, thinking, and not being so fully static in one mindset that we aren't adaptable to engaging with consciousnesses that could be quite different from our own.
I think that's a
100%.
really important thing to think about. And just like how we do become really static. And like I see it in people that I'm teaching, I see it in people that I learn from, I see it in books, I see it like everywhere where we just become really static and entrenched in these ways. And then people are like, well, that's not the way it's done. That's not the way it's done. But like it hasn't been done. That doesn't mean that it's not the way.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
want I want to do it this way, and we're gonna experiment and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, cool. But also, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I
Yeah.
get burned, I get burned.
But I
think
think that's
one
how you
of
actually know something is by
Yeah.
actually figuring it out as opposed to just repeating something that you're told or that you read in a book. And I think a lot of times, for those of us that have had students and things like that, and this is certainly not everyone, but I think that this is cultural. I mean, this isn't dunking on anyone um, who struggles with this or approaches these. Oftentimes I'll get these questions where it is like, well, what should I do, X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, the answer is actually a bit more like, what do you think you should do? Let's explore this together, as opposed to there's not a singular answer. So we need to look at this actually a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, if
And
that makes sense. I think because I would much rather have lead people to finding a solution or perhaps getting
mm,
experimental and finding the answer for themselves, as opposed to just prescriptively being like, no, do this, do X for situation Y, and
mhm.
that's it. That's how you deal with that situation. And it's like, is it always though? And is it better for someone to lead people towards developing their own confidence and problem solving and finding answers, as opposed to just acting like there are prescriptive answers for all things, between heaven and earth, because I don't think that's
Yeah.
entirely accurate.
Absolutely. And even the gods of magicians are often tricksters who are very playful and bizarre and childlike at times and are shape-shifting between genders and presentations and are willing to like straddle the ambiguities of life, of which magic I
Mhm.
think is and the imaginal world, which I think in English can be kind of a really negative term. It's like, oh, it's imagination, like it's not
Right.
real. But it actually I think that that is part of like the muscles, I suppose,
Yeah.
that is what helps seership happen. That is what helps
Yeah.
you see spirits and
Yeah.
actually even be open to seeing spirits. Like
Yes.
half of, like the grimoires are about, okay, how do we get them to show up physically? It's like, okay, but there's also all these sigils and these pentacles that help you see. And to create conditions for the spirits can manifest more easily, that's also based on you and your ability to
Mhm.
see a medium. And so I think a lot about like if everything in your life is just if all you have is a hammer, then every problem is a nail, right? And then it
Yeah.
becomes this situation of like what is the cunning and cunning folk? Like where is the intellect and the play to be like, I just came up with a solution through divination, through help, through spirits, through my own imagination that is more creative and is more sophisticated and is more beautiful ultimately to actually
And
resolve. Yeah.
more meaningful and connected to you because you
Mm-hmm.
got there on
Mm-hmm.
your own, as opposed to engaging with what I would call superstition, which like we all do it to some extent or another. But to me, what I consider to be superstition is to just do something prescriptively without any type of rhyme or reason and the understanding of why you're doing that. It doesn't mean that what you're doing may not be effective, but you don't actually understand the mechanism behind it. You're just doing it as a prescriptive, right? And so I prefer to have an understanding of the why behind things. And if it's something that like, I went through that process, I'm much more connected to all of the why behind it because we went through this process of figuring it out, whether it's through divination or doing the deeper research into, why this material is worked with in this way or engaging with the spirit of that thing. There's a
Mhm.
much bigger payoff to it all. Yeah, I kind of lost a little bit where I was going with that, but
I
Keep
think
doing that.
engaging with that question of like why is really what develops people as like magicians, like people who
yes.
devote their
Yeah.
life to the practice and really
Mm-hmm.
want to get into that nitty gritty because anyone culturally can be like, oh, a storm is coming, let me go put a knife in the ground outside, or like, oh, someone has like some affliction on them, let me cleanse them with an egg, and a
Yeah.
lot of the time if you dare call someone a magician who's doing that, they'll be like, no, that's like not me at all, I'm just doing what I'm doing it the way it's done. Like
Yeah.
that's all it is. So I think when you really are cultivating these sort of attitudes of creativity and exploration and play, that the intellectual curiosity behind everything, kind of that fervor of like excitement of discovery, is an
Yeah.
important ingredient in all sorts of different magic that you can do. Like if you are, like you were saying, if you are exploring, if you're innovating, if you're kind of inventing and figuring out how to get from point A to point B, then everything is going to be tweaked a little bit. And I think for all of us who have done, client work or things for like on commission, no two workings are going to be exactly the same, even if they're for the same purpose. And then
Yeah.
that's where a lot of that kind of energy comes in. So, like, even with dolls, like, if you are going to make an image of someone, each time that image is going to be a little different. There's going to be tweaks. There's going to be different ingredients. It's going to be shaped to their character. It's going to be different material. The spirit might show up and be like, just make it out of paper and write their name in the middle of that. And then it's done. That's the link. Other times it might
Yeah.
be like, I don't know, get some clay, build it up, do a whole thing, or get some cloth, build it up. And having all of those things in your tool belt is really exciting, because behind all that, it's like, okay, what's the difference here? What's going on? And then that's when the magic brain is really like, ooh.
And I think it's really important, like what you're talking about is like part of actual practice, right? Like actually doing the magic and actually doing the stuff. And I think that when you're actually doing it, that also helps to kind of flex your confidence muscles, like as things, begin to build and you actually see things shifting around you and you really feel something happening. And I think that for a lot of beginners, and even like old hats, right? Like there is this kind of paucity of confidence sometimes. And so like something that I was going to bring up with about a student of mine is that she came up with a really interesting solution to a problem that she was having with a spell, and then checked a book and decided that it wasn't worth it. And it was like, she was like, well, I went back and I looked at like a couple of references and it just didn't seem like it was going to work. And I was like, in my experience, like what you came up with is so creative and so interesting. Like we should do that right now. We're going to go get the things. We're going to do it. And like, it was my excitement that helped her get reinvigorated about it.
Good.
But like,
Yeah.
I wish there was a way for beginners to like, just be willing to run with things and to maybe fail, but like at least you tried something really, really cool and something new. And I think like that does come with practice. It's part of one of the cool things about having mentors is that they can be excited for you. But yeah, like this idea of practice and being able to play and see how things go. And like Svinga, you were talking about the positionality of things. Like, how do you position a thing? Like, what is your location in the room, the location of the thing? Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. And I see Matt's face wanting to say something, and I want to hear it because I love you. So
say in part with what you were talking about, I think that like, there's ultimately a difference between like learning how to cook and replicating recipes out of a cookbook versus becoming confident and creative enough and willing to take chances where you're creating your own recipes, where you become a chef, where you become, a baker, where you understand enough of the process of food and flavor and all these things that you can start creating new things. And I think that the same is very true of magic. And what a wonderful feeling to be led by something. There's a problem, you have a creative solution, you put that to test, and then you have an effective result. That is how you build true confidence in magical practice, is sometimes by just trying it. And I think that's also how you start to understand at least the language of magic and the methodology of how magic works for you. I mean, some of the most rewarding things for me have been when I stumble upon something or have a creative drive to try a certain type of magic in a certain type of way, and then later on find out oh no, this is like actually a way that people have done this. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like in a different culture or, like thousands of years ago, you come across something and it's like, oh, wow. Like I want to say, maybe I'm wrong off the top of it, but I've utilized lodestones inside of like, effigies before, right?
Mm.
And then I found in the PGM, I'm pretty sure, maybe I'm wrong. I wish I could remember off the top of my head which one it was, but I swear there's a working within the PGM where a wax effigy has basically a lodestone placed within it. If it wasn't the PGM, it was somewhere else. But it was just kind of like, oh, I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? The thing of it is it's like if you kind of have a
Yep.
mind,
I
yeah,
just found it. Yeah.
yeah,
PGM 4,
yeah.
2045 to 2000, sorry, 2145
Way
to
to be. I love that.
2240.
Just pulled it right up.
How to get it. How to get it. It says that it's a charioteer who carries the tablet along with a lodestone and it's
Yes,
placed
and
within
it's
it. Yeah.
for, I think it's for success in business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But so working with that, right? Thinking, okay, well, I'm going to create an effigy that's going to function, as like a Mamet or whatever we're going to call it, a crafted spirit or constructed spirit for attracting things like prosperity, business, what have you, and utilize a lodestone for that. And then seeing, okay, thousands of years ago, someone also had this same idea, that's fucking cool. And like, so I love those kind of moments, and I feel like you don't really have those type of moments if you don't allow yourself to think creatively, think about the mechanisms of magic. I love looking at books of spells, whether they're contemporary or grimoires or receipt books, or looking through Hyatt stuff or going back and looking at the PGM or all of these other things. But they're all really great points of inspiration. Because when you study this, you start to understand the broader language
Mhm.
of magic, right? And then you can develop like more of that competence by trying things because you understand the mechanics of it eventually. It's just the same way that someone who is learning how to cook understands how, starch and acid and all of these other things and salt are going to work together to make something that is nourishing and delicious and all of these other things. So
And that's why it's important to like do the tradition, right? Like you do the research, you do the education, you get the scaffolding, the framework, but then then play with it. Go do your own thing with it.
yeah,
And I think that's also like I think that in contemporary like discussions there is this kind of like denigration of tradition or like an absolute idea of tradition.
Mhm.
And really they like a tradition should be living, it should be evolving, it should be changing within its own structure, right? So like I
Otherwise,
think
it's
that's
not
something.
living. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
we were just talking about this with Rebecca By in our previous episode about how tradition is not about cosplay as like older people, and like putting on the outfits and the mannerisms and the language. It's about even in our language and our food tastes and immigrant populations and how ideas affect each other, how traditions evolve because they come into contact with other traditions or and nowadays to the internet, that's becoming hugely, now I always say that like my Balkan folk magic has become Kimandized and vice versa. Like it's natural. It's gonna be affecting each other. It can't not if it's all in me. Like
right,
I'm a living person and I hold traditions that I am learning in. And so of course they're gonna like my spirits will talk. Like you can't have them ignore each other and
right,
exist in their separate cabinet spaces and never say hi to each other and never support me in individual ways by communicating without me even being aware of it. But it
yes,
is and that's how traditions evolve too. I mean, the proof is that they are living, is that they've changed. And it isn't about finding like the original. I mean, the PGM is literally just someone's notebook, right? Like
yeah,
with
yeah,
lots of abbreviations. And then now it's become like a text. Like it's become a
right,
model for how we want to approach a certain subset of late antique magic in the
yeah,
Mediterranean world. And that is both wonderful, but ultimately initiatic is like, what's the whole point of doing all the grimoires if not to eventually call the spirit and be like, okay, now you and I have a relationship. Next time you show up, I want like a secret handshake that we do, or like a secret name or a secret sigil, something that only you and I knew. If I trace this in my palm, you'll manifest instantly and come by my side. Like we're gonna agree to this now, and in return you get these offerings. Like tell me what plants do you work with? Like fill out all that stuff that isn't originally in the text because now they
yeah,
have a relationship with you, and now you get to be like, okay, well that spirit is now telling you all this stuff, and that's how. And I know we want to talk. I'm curious to pick your guys' minds about like specifically like doll magic and like the ways that we kind of interact with dolls. But I think that the microcosm of like a little person, a little
yeah,
Magistellas, a little Roots, a little Mandrake, whatever, that's also a created being, like, and the way that we had its, whether it's Egyptian, opening of the mouth, or whether it's we're literally breathing into it and being as God, created the primordial atom, whatever you want to, describe it. There is this, like, the play and the creativity is essential. Like, you can't just be married to the way a text or a teacher even tells you something. There has to be an ongoing dialogue and divination and interaction with the spirits that are going to animate this damn thing. Otherwise, you're just you're even in regular like arts that we don't necessarily think of as sorcery. Like the best art contains that spirit, right? So I do think that the openness, I think you guys are both amazing authors, and I'm so excited, Kamden, about your new book. Last time, Matt, we had you on just 10 episodes ago, actually, to talk about yours. And it's, and I love how both of you always emphasize, like, take this and run with it and make it yours, and then you're responsible for it. That don't say I told you to do that, right? But like now you get to enjoy and add your own thing to it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's not the worst thing in the world. Like the best lawyer loses a case every now and then, right? The top surgeon in the world will have someone die on his table that's much higher stakes than just be like, did the spell work? Sometimes, it's good to just actually still have fun with it without it becoming something where the one time it doesn't work, it's not an invitation to be like, that's exciting. It's disappointing, but it's exciting. Let me figure out why. Was it the planetary hour? Was it lack of link? Was it not enough prayer? Was it just too much, like not enough focus? Was I too caffeinated? Like it can become this interesting thing of like, or maybe their spirits are like, everything was great. I just got fucked along the way while delivering it. And something happened that completely interrupted me and sidetracked me. And that's completely fine. As opposed to now I just, I give up, as you were saying earlier, Kamden. Like I don't even feel like the excitement to try anymore because it's just so discouraging.
Yeah. That's hard. It really is.
Yeah. Like they're one of the most like important elements, like even, going back to stuff like Picatrix, it's like, what is the death of magic? It's a lack of conviction. And being able to remain devoted to the cringe, I guess, of like, and this, and kind of to gesture wildly in the direction of a good friend of the show, Vanessa Arena's article, "Irony is the Death of Magic."
Yeah,
like to make a doll of a person and to play with it in front of you, be like, do I am walking you away from my house, so you leave me alone forever. Now I throw you out the yard, tie you to a train, send you on the way. That whole type of thing.
Very tunes.
Yeah, it is. And the harder that you grab hold of and love and celebrate and just truly embrace, I'm fucking doing this right now. It is cringe, but I am free.
Yeah.
Then there are two wolves inside of you. One is cringing, one is turned on.
Yeah.
There are two wolves inside me and they're fucking.
Dang.
It's like kind of and I love, I mean, you touched on, so many of the spirits and gods that we associate with magic, right, are also associated with trickery, oftentimes often associated with the fool in this way. And this is one of the things I actually talked about in my writing, where it's like people talk about trickster spirits, like beware trickster spirits. And I'm like, to the best of my understanding, most of the gods of magic are actually trickster spirits. And oftentimes a part of it is that they do kind of remind us not to get too hubristic. They also remind us not to take ourselves too seriously, and also to think about things in different and paradoxical ways, which to me, magic oftentimes exists in a point of paradox, right? I am playing with a doll, but I am also God right now. I'm engaging in imitatio Dei, right? I am imitating the God.
I am Solomon.
Yes. And like, I am Prometheus. I have crafted you from clay. And now you are born of the breath, and now what I do to you is what is done to you, and I have this power. And so being able to recognize that, yes, what I'm holding may be a figure of clay or cloth, but also the paradox is it is also fucking that very person, right? My hands are the hands of the gods working upon you. And so having that requires a certain playfulness. It requires a conviction, and to get beyond the cringe and to have the actual audacity to know it to be true. And so there's like so many layers into all of that yeah, but I think you need to be comfortable with
Mhm.
being cringe. You need to be comfortable standing in a room talking to yourself or talking to a rock or talking to a plant and all these things that we were kind of taught, if you did it when you were a kid, you were a fucking weirdo, right?
Mhm.
But I think a lot of us probably did do those kind of things when we were kids because we had a natural inclination towards this type of spirit work and towards magic. And so it is a re-embracing of that. So there's an element of allowing yourself that play so that you can step into that mindset of no, I am engaging with the imaginal and this is real. This is real now, at least, because
Yeah.
for this moment, for this time, this is reality.
Mm-hmm. And I love so much of what you were sharing as well about the kind of stepping into that office and really embodying that role. I love that you used the word audacity because something that we've kind of like joked pretty seriously, but also joked about on the show has been like just to even do like magic or witchcraft takes audacity to be like, I'm not okay with the hand I've been dealt. I'm choosing differently. Like I'm going to change this and I'm not going along with it. And I think that there's it doesn't at all like preclude you also being a generous, compassionate person who wants to care
Right.
for, community. But you do have to be willing to be like, I'm standing up for myself. I'm choosing better. I once really got called out by one of my spirits who was like, why are you asking for protection and making effigies and protection charms and decoys and putting things around your home and then doing the equivalent of leaving your front door unlocked by having bad boundaries? And that really like was like, okay, I see what you're saying. Like I'm basically disrespecting the work that I'm asking you to empower into my life by not being willing to just go away out of a bad situation that's not good for me or feeling still on some level bound to it. And so realizing, okay, I don't need more protection. I need more better boundaries. And like so
Yeah.
it's moments like that where, to just be able to be like, I'm choosing this. And like, we love a PGM, I am Pharaoh, so no for whom none hath ever seen, woman of embodying things. But like I always think about that quote from the Bible of like Jesus I know and what is it, Paul I know, but who are you? Like what are you like in casting me out in the name of Jesus and Paul? Like who the hell are you? And like you have to embody it. Like otherwise the spirit's like why should I even care? Like and so I think that in that moment is a level of ritual play where you're temporarily on some meta level possessed by the office that you're invoking into yourself, just through claiming it. And that also, of course, it can include fasting, it can include purification beforehand, it can include all kinds of things and trickery, right? You put on the wolf skin, you say I'm a real wolf, and
Yeah.
I'm temporarily shapeshifting into one. I'm putting the musk on my body, like I'm rubbing myself down with certain things so that the good neighbors don't realize I'm human. So that I can travel into the Sabbath without being caught as a human. I can get the stench of humanity off me. Like I've always, I don't think we should necessarily ignore the history that magic and magicians have always been associated with charlatanry.
Yeah.
And there's no ridding us of that charge. And I think that even the gods of magic are also accused by other gods of being charlatans. I think of like Loki, I think of Hermes, and it's
Mhm.
just like, okay, well, like, what is that to play with? Like, maybe it can be like, okay, like you can think I'm a fool. You can think I'm ridiculous. You can think that I'm doing all this stuff and it's kind of cringe and annoying, but like, what if it works?
Mhm.
I think that's
That's
actually part of our power, though, is like
Mm-hmm.
people do think of you as a charlatan. They don't think you're coming, and then you come. I think that it's interesting that in the world at large, there is kind of this idea that what we do is fake, that what we do is false in some way. I think it's interesting that the people that our clients come to us to help them with also may not put as much stock in what we're doing. And so, like, it's part of the power, it's part of being hidden and being able to come from behind, from diagonal, like in that trickstery way. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to come at you like Spider-Man. You're not even going to know. I'm coming from above. I'm coming from behind. I'm layering this spell like you wouldn't even believe. And so uh, it's
Just
interesting that I think what people consider one of our greatest weaknesses is actually one of our greater strengths.
Mm.
Um,
And what a powerful spirit ally that is to have, right? Like in a spirit
yeah,
when they can do those kinds of things. When they're like, I didn't come through the front door, I came through the hinge or
yeah,
sideways. And like as witches often do. And
yeah.
so even with like just kind of tie back to doll magic, I think about the kind of core, I think you were mentioning it's like the core act of like in some ways sympathetic magic. And yet it's so limitless. Like I
yeah.
have been told by various mentors, it's like for example, one of my teachers in the tradition of Bayenye, which I'm initiated in, it's an oral charming tradition from Serbia. She was like, give me an example of a client who her husband was straying, and she was just like, yeah, get his hair, get his pubes, get whatever, mix it into the beeswax and do this. And she was, and she was like, yeah, just have it look at you. Like, look at you when you're touching yourself, when you're doing other things, like just keep it staring at you. Like, and if it annoys you, have it look at awful things. Like, have it listen to bad music on the radio, have it like basically the little torture, right? And be like, you can, and she was basically describing Pavlov conditioning this person into like essentially obeying her. And it worked amazingly, smearing fluids on it, like, but keeping it blindfolded, sometimes keeping it not blindfolded. And the reason we use soap so often, actually, and this case was beeswax, it's so, pliable to the heat of the hands, but soap is mostly used for curses because it will melt. And so, you make an effigy out of someone's genitals and you stick it with pins and you put it by a bad tree, and eventually it melts in the sun and like even into the dirt, it'll actually fully decompose. And then the virility is gone. Like when I was at the Church of St. Cyprian and Justina in Phili in Greece, one of the archbishop there actually told us a story where the monks collectively had a dream where they realized that a person who came to them who was saying like his struggle was that he could not consummate his marriage. He's a young man who had a new wife, and it was really, and he couldn't, and he was like, I've never had this issue before, I've always been able to be erect. And he's like, this is really embarrassing, but like genuinely, I can't seem to get hard. Like, what's going on? And the priests had a dream that there was an effigy, the effigy I described actually came from that story, under a tree in his backyard. They looked, and there was indeed a soap penis with pins and like other like gross looking things in there. And so
has a story exactly like that. I love
really,
it.
yeah. So this is from Greece, right? This is right outside of Athens in Philly, and it was fascinating because they were like, yeah, well, like witches do that, right? And it's like it's melting and it's taking away his virility, and once they cleansed that, like he was fine,
Yeah.
But it was one of those things of like, what are you doing with it? Or are you burying it? Are you hanging it? Are you beating it with a belt? And then every time you go see the person that it's meant to be, it's like your boss, you just touch the belt and they flinch, like when you wear it to work. Like, what awful, nasty, things are you doing to this damn thing? Because you have created a little microcosm, and that's why we had a decoy episode where we're like, let's, let it not hit you. If you're the one whose picture got printed off and put in a doll, like let it go to something else. Let it be directed elsewhere. And then the decoy takes the hit and bursts, but it's not you. And then you're like, shit, I gotta be on this. Yeah.
I think that's one of the fascinating things with construction technology of these different dolls is just how identically the compositions can look, but be for radically different purposes. Like you just mentioned, like you make a wax image, you put your own hair in there, and then you bury that in the roots of a tree somewhere, and now that's your protection. It just depends on how you conjure it. Versus, if I'm going to find someone, take a piece of their hair, put it in wax, and then put that under a different nasty tree, and say the different prayer, it's going to really fuck them up, so we've done
or heal them if it's the opposite, right? Just be like, I'm you're a distance client, I want to keep washing you and nourishing you and like in like the milk of a calf, and just keep putting honey on you and like soothing you and putting like pins that are putting healing oils directly where it hurts most and alleviating that symptom, as opposed like I think of all those like images that you see in like the covers of books about like ancient Greek magic. Like I think Magic Ahera has one, and also there's that really famous one of like cursed tablets. And you see that like bound figure with like the copper pins, and it's actually a love spell. It's not to hurt them. It's not. It looks gnarly, but it's to make it like make your genitals burn for me, your heart burns for me. You can't like get it up for anyone but me. You only look at me. Like that's what it's directing.
Yeah. That same spell is in the PGM.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see an actual example of it. But to point, and this is why I was thinking the same thing and kind of nodding along when you were talking about this, is how it's a bit funny to me sometimes when I'll see like online people find like spell remnants and people will be like, oh, what was this? And a bunch of people are kind of making conjecture about like what they think it is based upon what it looks like. And again, sometimes the exact same tech could be used for cursing, it could be used for healing, it could be used for a number of things. And so like I've used kind of similar to like what you were talking about. I was going to ask you earlier about the soap thing. So thanks for explaining that's because it melts more. But like also unfired clay works really well for things like that. And you could take unfired clay and craft an effigy of that and make it into a poppet that you put into a jar full of swamp water and piss, and like, baptize that for someone, and as it that, like let it dry fully and then put it in the jar, and then over time that's going to break down, right? So you can break down their health, break down their fortune, what have you, whatever you're conjuring it for. But at the same time, you could also create an effigy with that and transfer illness from an individual, and then take that to a healing tree, like you said, a healing tree, or in some parts of cemeteries where you could actually leave that, bury it, and then so it's kind of a wasting spell, but in this case you're wasting away the illness, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So there's so many different ways that you could use that same technology of kind of wasting something away, and or taking beeswax and melting it over time too. I mean they were doing that oftentimes for cursing, but I mean there's instances of that, from ancient Egypt and onwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
Actually,
kind of
with soap, there is here in New Mexico, there is like people do these spells with just like a bar of ivory soap, but they like carve it into like the image of a man to get rid of an abusive husband. And so then they'll like mix his hair, his fluids or whatever onto the soap, and then they'll put it in the river and like let the water wash the soap away. And as the soap dissolves, the husband loses interest and leaves without causing trouble.
Yeah.
Like that's actually pretty common here.
Yeah, even just like rubbing your body down so that you dominate the person, or your musk gets all over them, or like all they know is your scent, or all they know is to follow your command. It's the kind of reference I made earlier about like beating it and touching the belt, or like having it watch something, having it literally like only listen to certain kinds of things is essentially or doing it at night when the person's asleep and more vulnerable.
Yes.
Like all these kinds of techniques are ultimately playing on there is a real connection to this person, like, and you are choosing to, even though they're out there autonomously and all their other soul pieces are otherwise intact and in their body, you are choosing to have the conviction that all of them is here. And like, you have a piece of them here, but you're choosing to act as if all of them is here and everything that's happening to them is identical. And I think for the healing situations, it's such a great technology for like, even like blessing someone with wealth. Like I love the idea of putting them up on the back of like a pentacle or like a symbol that has to do with wealth, and just having them be upright and dominant on it, and then or upside down if you don't want that, and that kind of thing. It's nailing that to a tree. Like I use cork boards for everything because you can just stick things on and take them off. But it is ultimately a technology of conviction, as we were saying. It's also just one of like, what your spirit will do to that is completely sometimes even not up to you. Like they agree to it. It's like, yep, I will do this 100%. And you don't even know who else they hired to do other things to the doll. So even you may not fully know by the end of it like, what's actually occurring to it. So it's, Matt, I was really thinking about how many times after roll my eyes because someone posts on like Reddit or social media, it's just like, I saw this working, this is crazy, what is that? And it's like locks, for example, and it's just like that could be to lock someone's love together in a good way, to be just like, I just want us to be faithful to each other, we're doing this together. It could be to lock someone's from never having a passion for anyone else again. It could be really dangerous. It could be locking somene's health down, or it could be healing. It's like, I am keeping this, I don't know, the illness away from you forever. Like all of this is flexible, and I just love how you mentioned the idea of like, sometimes certain spirits are like, I can't bring you wealth, but I could kill your poverty. I can't bring you love, but I can kill your loneliness. Like I will take it away from you and create room for things to flow, and other spirits can be filled with better candidates. But that's what I'm in, that like necrotic capacity.
Well, that's actually how I feel a lot about Santa Muerte.
Yeah.
Right. She's death. So she kills the things that are in the way of your prosperity to help you get more prosperous. It's not, you know what I mean? There's not a hugely generative force there. It's usually actually about removing of the things that stand in the way of what it is that you're asking for her intercession upon. Like bringing an end, a death to the situations that stand in the way of the situation you'd like to see. So that because that's the nature, the entire nature of death, right? So you can't really expect death to be a totally generative force other than what it makes room for.
Yeah. So. My teacher in Brujeria, Alex Fuoco, said the same thing to me recently. It was like, it's all about, with her, it's specifically about, she can like kill the disease, she can bring death to the thing that plagues you and that, ails you. And that actually creates more room and
Yeah.
so it even goes to go with her tools. Yeah, I actually, speaking of spirits like that, I wanted to ask, do you guys find that it helps you to have like a major patron? Like, do you kind of do you have a specific spirit that you always go to with your doll work, or is it like a patron? Some people love like a little clay making deity, or others have like it's completely irrelevant, depends entirely on the purpose. It's just a genre of magic for me. I don't need like a specific patron of it, and it's individual spirits will come in and act, or is it an art form that you've kind of developed with a spirit specifically?
For me, the each working is kind of its own
Mm-hmm.
thing. I do work mainly with Akate. Like I turn to her for like advice and stuff and guidance, and I do divination under her auspices and like that kind of thing. But each of the workings kind of takes on its own life, and I don't know that it's any one particular thing other than the thing in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Right.
working itself is kind of guiding it. Um, and then when I get stuck, like turn to Ancestor, turn to Ikate, turn to various other spirits. Like you mentioned Hermes. Hermes often has really fun ideas,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I get little intuitions. But kind of like, I don't know. It's also in some ways, especially with effigy magic, sometimes I think it's the spirit of the person. Like it's the spirit of the target that's like, hey, if you do this, I'm weak here. That actually kind of informs you. So like they're in on this conversation. And that's part of my book that I tried to make it really clear. Like, are you just playing with dolls or are you doing magic? Because there is a difference. And like part of it is engaging with spirit, part of it is asking for guidance, part of it is asking the target themselves, like your own spirit, like all of this stuff. But are you actually engaging on that level? Like, are you just creating a physical anchor or are you actually anchoring something to it? Is spirit helping you to create the connection that will actually cause the difference? Like we've been saying, will it turn the doll into this person? Like, what is that function? And I think a lot of people just make dolls and then they don't actually enliven them in any way, which is partially this communal working within spirit and with other spirits. And then, like in my book, I also talk about, are you creating the connection between like the doll and your target, or are you also like, are you creating a spirit that you actually implant in the target? And then you like anchor that to an effigy, and like you're working with a spirit that you've created inside the other person and it's doing whatever work. And Svinga, like you said, like, is it hiring other people? That would be
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Like bring the whole posse. Let's get this
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, because sometimes spirits are like, I want this big fat offering because I'm gonna divide it with a bunch of other people that you don't even know about. They're
Right.
my friends, they're my homies, and I know exactly who to call on because of the issue that you're facing here, which is maybe an insufficient link, or maybe that link requires a lot of baptism and prayer and like enlivening it first before it goes into the core of something. So I love what you raised about just I'm much the same way. It's individual spirits that will kind of go. Although I do have a primary saint that I work a lot of like doll magic with, just because of her bread magic really excited. Well, most of my dolls are bread. I was gonna say, I make
That's
because
great.
as they rise, right, like the person enters them, and there's a lot of like oral charming that has to do with like the water that grows the yeast is captured under the light of a certain star with some silver, and then you add that, and then a bit of holy water goes in that's taken on from a certain church on a certain day, and that goes into proofing the yeast, and then when you make the little person out of it, that's or you make the core of their heart is the bread, and everything else can be other material. The
Mhm.
idea is that it rose, like it basically like in the way that Lazarus did or Jesus did, and so on.
Yeah.
Or and so bread saints become a really huge part of that, or like domestic saints become really huge in that way. But something that I really love that you touched on as well is just the notion of like how do you really know you've done it sufficiently? They created that link, and the baptism processes, prayer, like just timing. It can be a lot of things. Like I'm a huge fan of the fourth pentacle of Mercury that grants access to hidden things, or things that are obscure to you, and usually it's or hidden knowledge, rather, I should say. Nothing is more hidden than someone else's mind, to you. And so, I love that you were like, well, have the person be in dialogue, be like, what's your, make an elaborate offering to their ancestors, and be like, step aside, I'm bribing you.
Yeah.
I'm going after your boy. It's for their best. It's for their good. Or if it's for positive working, like, help me make this person prosperous. Like, I want to bathe them in a money wash for 7 weeks, and see what happens to them. Make their feet and their hands like literally become outstretched and receive gold.
I actually find that a lot with clients is like their grandmother has prayed over them for so long, like so hard, that my particular kind of working doesn't get through the first couple of times, because it's like they have these really powerful protections, and I have to convince grandma like I'm okay. I'm here to help. And I've seen a lot of really interesting things happen after like leaving offerings for their ancestors, or like having them talk to their ancestors at home. And then they come in for like a third working, and it's like, oh, now everything's flowing. Everything's good, because now
they open the road to it. Yeah.
They open the road because I've convinced this person that really distrusted witchcraft, that really distrusted conjuring. And now that spirit is kind of like, oh, okay, neat. She's going to get more money. Awesome. So that's an interesting point to bring up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Implanting things is so interesting. Like so much of like, I was going to say like Balkan witchcraft, but truly it's every tradition. Like I could think of examples of this, and everything I've studied is like, the home is sacred, right? Like what breaches the home is there's a reason you might want to deliver a powder in an unmarked envelope, and it confettis onto the doorknob. There's plenty of reasons you might want to sneak things into somebody's space. Like I think about Matt, we referenced your class on witch bottles a lot in our witch bottle episode, where we talked a lot about just like the technology of like stopping the witch's urine and doing it yourself, and so on, by identifying these things, or being buried in hearths and so on. And I love I was just talking about this actually in our Patreon Discord server about a few weeks ago, about how smuggling in the spy, as a housewarming gift. Here's a simple plant that I got you that a spirit is implanted into, and everywhere you water it, it's going to know and report back to me, and expand my domain. Like this is typical, like young lady just got married in the village, moves in with her husband's family, the mother-in-law, there's already tension, and she's the inferior one. She's the newest there. The house doesn't know her, right? She's like everyone has an established family dynamic, and she's the new person. And also, with the gender dynamic of it, she's also the one that now everyone's expecting to do a lot of labor. And it's a hard position sometimes in a very more traditional lens. And so what they do is like, well, here's this plant and here's these things, and you smuggle in your own juju, in until it's getting watered and nourished. Or like, here's a beautiful, thing that I got you, and it has a spirit and it's watching you now, this rock, and so it becomes this, and every time you constantly water it, in the backyard, it's getting some power. And so even just the implanting is fascinating, because it can be, the classic witchcraft shit of, taking someone's a little piece of their soul out, you put something else in. And with the home, that becomes smuggling things into the literal vicinity of the home, which I find that so much of like, my own research and my own training in folk and folk magic is so domestic like that, because 99% of the time, this is like someone who had very little social power who is now trying to wield it in a way that will give them strength. Like I think a lot about the Russian example of Chernoknigi, like black books. It sounds sexy. You think of Saint Cyprian. You think of like, oh, it's a grimoire. They're black because they were kept in ovens, because your husband wouldn't find it there, and the ash collects and turns it black. And they're mostly charms to, frankly, prevent domestic violence, help you with your fertility, keep someone loyal to you, because they're the only chance you have at financial, like stability. It's your partner, unfortunately, and so you might as well be able to control them, because their moods or them drinking a lot, it can change everything for you, and it can create a really dangerous environment. So the black books that were these literally, I think a lot about the Swedish and Scandinavian versions and the regional ones, but like it is less grimoires and more like books of, like folk charms and stuff like that, and they are women passing down their like ash covered books of like, this is what you do. And so even there, like the ash of the oven, right? Or the old breadcrumbs from a bit of the Eucharist. All these little things can go inside and live in a doll more passionately and more powerfully, because you're saying, hey, it's not just my power. The church did this, right? This is Jesus himself. Okay, it's going in there. It makes it live, right? This is his literal body. So let's make this a literal body.
Right.
So beautiful.
Just a random little fun thought tidbit, since we're talking about like secreting things away and we're talking about dolls. Do you know what I love to carry around with me just so that I have them? Is I love those tiny little worry dolls
Yeah.
because they're tiny and they can be secreted away, and you can say a charm, you can say an enlivening, you can take a bit of your spittle and impregnate basically the yarn that's wrapped around them. You can take a bit of oil and kind of dress that and then put it in place for whatever purposes, right? And so you can, I will give it a name. You can give it a name, do a quick working on it, and in a pinch, you can put it anywhere for any number of reasons, and then call it back. Whether it's reconnaissance type work, protection work, any number of things. But I mean, of course, I love more complex, involved effigies and things like that. But for those who like dolls in a pinch, like those worry dolls, quite can be quite effective, fun little things if you enjoy working with effigy forms for that type of thing.
And they're
Absolutely.
super simple, and you can get like 150 of them for like $15. Like,
They're very cheap. They're very very inexpensive, and I do like. I mean, you could also even take like if you had a little bit of hair from someone, wrap that around it. There's a lot of versatile things you can do with that.
Great
But,
ways to just remove things off people too. Like you were saying earlier, Matt, like if you want to maybe brush someone down with, like, we use stones or, animals sometimes, where the illness gets passed to a rooster and you kill the rooster, or you pass
yeah,
them to certain number of stones and you bury them in a certain number of places or float them in rivers and get it far away from the person. In the same way, being like, this is the version of you that has this, and now we're going to let it go elsewhere or be purified in a different way.
yeah.
We do a lot of like moth magic that where we capture moths and literally throw them in flames and be like, each
Oh,
one's named
really?
after a certain thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. But it's interesting too, because I was just thinking about like the effigies that you make out of other beings, right? Like, you are this root, I'm living a root, specifically like a little Magistellus, or I am, the kind of really nasty magic of like, you are this toad and this toad is going to die now,
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. But it all kind of, like, by what authority are you doing this? Like, but how are you transferring this particular consciousness, or how are you actually getting that person's link? And something. And I often think about one time I was speaking to a spirit about it, where I was like, here is the full like metaphysical justification for how I'm doing these steps, and here is the way that I'm borrowing from authority and things. And at one point, like, I was just over explaining because like I was getting nerdy about it, and the spirit like kind of interrupted me and was just like, yeah, but how much do you believe it? And I was
Right.
like, oh, like, yeah, because I was, I'm going to use the Eucharist. I'm going to do this. I'm going to use holy water from 7 churches. I'm going to do that. It's like, oh, probably way overcomplicating it. It doesn't even probably would work with none of that. But at the same time, I had a structure in my mind, but the spirit was just like, okay, all of that is perfectly fine, but do you believe each step? Like, or is it just a mechanical thing you're going through in your head?
yeah.
So I have a theory that people that are more academically minded and have more complex like understanding of just things like science, biology, history,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. From my experience, academics love some incredibly complex, multi-layered fucking magic because they've trained their minds not to believe. And so sometimes I think that it requires like, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
do find that people with complex minds, um, generally engage in more complex magic, and it doesn't always need to be complex to be effective. And so, I mean, I say this also oftentimes like in reference to myself, like in the sense that I think that a part of it is like, well, of course it's going to work because I have these
Mm-hmm.
7 waters from these 7 places. I have these 7 dirts from these 7 gates. I have like all of these plants, and I understand the spirit of these plants and the folkloric use of these plants and all these other things. I understand the words that I'm doing. I know that there's a precedent for this type of technology, blah, 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 blah. Um, and that all I think helps us to get past maybe the cringe of it, because it's like, well, no, all of this makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas like sometimes people can do things from a more, and again, I'm not using this in a fully derogatory way, but from a more superstitious way, where someone's like, no, you just go do this, you take this tongue, you slice it in half, you put peppers in it, whatever, and the person might not actually understand the technology of it, but the working is still effective, right? Because the principles are still sound, regardless of whether or not the individual in engaging with them and enacting them understands all the underlying principles. Just in the same way that, like, you can take a recipe for lasagna, and if you do it right, you're going to end up with lasagna. You might not understand the history of lasagna, or but I mean,
Yeah.
from my experience, but I also think that that level of complexity, it also shows someone who really kind of also loves, like, just like someone who gets really into cooking, right? Like what they are crafting is going to be different. They're not just going to be okay with a lasagna recipe from a book. They're going to create their own thing that's mind blowing and whatever. These are my bad analogies, but
I think they're great analogies, and I actually really it's funny that you raised this because I had this discussion literally recently with two different mentors. So Alex and I were talking about this the other day, and just about like when the superstition, just kind of use that word. It's like, well, if you're like, this is a lodestone, it has a spirit, it will obey me, it does this thing, and you spit on it and you do that, and like it does the thing for you, as opposed to overthinking it and be like, well, I need 7 bank dirts and I need this, I need money from 7 stores, and like that's all fun and exciting, and obviously it plays into some of our training. But even in those situations, sometimes the spirit's like, I don't actually need that, I already have it.
right.
Like, and like
Yeah.
you went to all this effort to get me in this form, and now I have it. Like, you don't actually need to go that far anymore. You could just do
Yeah.
like just clean yourself off with 7 limes and call it a day. Like, you don't need all this other stuff. And I think that when I was talking to my other teacher in Serbia actually about this, and she was like, I love how much you love magic, and she was saying this to me, and I love how excited you are to experiment and play with things. Like you were saying, like the culinary gourmand who wants to go and make it from scratch and like make the noodles from scratch and everything, totally. But she was like, I just do what's cheapest. And she was like, I am not going to go out of my way to buy a bunch of extra materia for something that I know, like 5 plants in my backyard, a bit of my spit, and like the already growing connection of things I have in my house, like old laundry that I don't need anymore. It's eaten by mice. Like, I'll just rip that cloth. I don't need new cloth. I don't need to look pretty. Like, I don't need to go, because I was like, oh, I'll go to like, a store and get the, cloth for this. And she was like, do you have old laundry? Like she was just like, it's don't waste $50 to get someone to shut up when you could do it with two, And I
Yeah.
really like, are they worth the $50? And it really kind of reminded me of like, I sometimes what's worth it is the fun that I have in
I
being
agree.
creative.
I agree.
Like,
Yeah.
and that is an ingredient for me. And like, I
Yeah.
know part of me is always going to be a little bit maximalist in some things, and until my spirits tell me like, actually, it's like challenge yourself with this, and that's totally great because I enjoy like having been raised Serbian and growing up with a lot of superstitions from the village that my family is from. Like, it is fun to just be like, I'll just do this, I'll quickly knock on the wood, I'll do that. I like doing those kinds of things, and it's part of, for sure, my life. But I just love playing. Like, I love being like, I know I could do this for this, I just want to have fun. And I
Yeah.
also understand that she's very right. Sometimes you just gotta do what is most cost effective because you got other shit going on in your life. Like, don't, like, she was like, out of sight, out of mind. You get that person out of your life and you're good, And I really, that's part of what I love about being in dialogue with mentors and other like amazing, practitioners like yourselves, is just to kind of be like, that is why I do that. And you know what? Like, sometimes it is to get over a bit of like the meta thinking, and sometimes it's because I just fucking love magic.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could draw a stick figure, or you could spend an afternoon like doing a wonderful like sketch drawing of something that's incredibly complex that has shading and
mhm.
depth and all of these things too, and not necessarily because you're creating something that needs to be a one-to-one replica of someone, but because you love the process of drawing, right? For instance, right? But in a pinch, sometimes a stick figure will do. Like
Yeah.
I've done incredibly complex, multi-layered, ritual on a number of things, but I've also had very effective, taken a piece of paper, drawn a sigil with, a ballpoint pen and spit on it and had that work too, So, there's sometimes when we add layers of complexity, um, it really can supercharge things and really superpower, but sometimes, the complexity sometimes it almost becomes too much. You know what I mean? It just depends. But that's how we learn. That's how we become stronger at what we do, is by experimenting, right? And it is fun. It is a part. I think those of us that love magic, whether it's simple or complex, and we want to explore it, get better at it, better understand it and the way that it works for us.
So going back to it, like going with what you're saying, Matt, I think that one of the keys to all of this, just to get like maybe mildly new agey for a second, is this idea of like surrender and acceptance, right? Like you have to surrender to play. You have to, and like belief and all of that stuff is also a type of surrender. Like I have to
Yeah.
surrender to this, like the reality of things, and also believe something totally like that I want to believe. Like I want to believe this, uh, which goes back to that the paradoxical nature of magic. But I think like part of the reason that sometimes something really, really simple works the best is because we allow it to do so. And why when like complex works, like we work ourselves up so much around these complexities that they become an obstacle. They become almost like a cross condition in and of themselves, right? Like because we haven't allowed the thing to flow, we haven't like surrendered to the spell itself, and then really let it kind of use us as a conduit and go forth into the world. And I think I don't know, that's kind of interesting to think about. I keep trying to like relate this to desire, and I know that there's a link there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do we bring in desire? How do we bring in jouissance? I want to talk about it, but my brain doesn't want to.
I
So,
th- I think something about desire is that it's the spark of all of this.
Yes.
And it is the raw animating force beyond if since we were talking so much about like the why of different ingredients, we can talk about the why of ourselves as an ingredient. Because we are a co-equal participant in our own spirit is in constant dialogue with the spirits of each ingredient, our spirit allies who are helping us manipulate the ingredients, the
Yeah.
spirit of the material or the working or the oil or the doll itself in front of us, the spirit of everything else. It's all, it's all spirits all the way down, ultimately. So the desire to engage with these things, the desire to say, um, this is enough to tip the scales of me devoting the next couple hours of my life putting a doll together, beating it with a belt, making dinner for myself, my family, and all of my spirits for helping me with the doll, and then going out into the world and changing that around. I think that is one of the most primary driving forces beyond just dolls, any magic that we're doing.
Like the desire to make it look good sometimes is part of it. Like a stick figure will do, and it can be very powerful. But sometimes you're like, part of the spirits that I'm working with, but maybe some of the ones I'm not even sure are already lending their hands. Like I'm not even aware that they're actively weaving some of their magic in this process because they're around me and they want to help. But maybe I'm thinking about somebody else more. That happens a lot to me. Where like I think like this is the spirit who stood up in the divination to help me with this, and we're gonna do this together. And then like they bring friends or other spirits of mine like looking, and they're like, I want to help too. And like they're like, oh, this has suddenly a very aesthetic Venusian quality that I'm really making it pretty. Like I really want to like that's part of it. Like to heal this person at a distance with this effigy, beauty is a part of it because they feel deprived of that right now. And so even though this is not to make them more beautiful, this is to heal them. There's something else. Giving them that agency of feeling comfortable and beautiful in their skin again is part of this. And so I think a lot about just how talking about desire and play and fun. I'm glad that this kind of conversation shaped into that. These are the kind of acid, fat, salts of magic in many ways,
Yeah.
and it can be such a fun way to make sure that you, for lack of a better term, all of us, whatever culture we come from, we are living in a kind of overall hegemonic kind of intellectual paradigm that says none of this is real. And so keeping that enchantment alive in us, even when we go out into a world that doesn't see it that way and can resist that and
Yeah.
can assume that we are less intelligent for this, that can assume that we are less rigorous and critical in our thinking because of this. It's seen as an inherent like artifact of an embarrassing pre-modern age. I'm doing big scare quotes right now on the camera. Like it is, which is not true, of course. We live in a time with more religions and more spiritualities than ever before. But nevertheless, like this particular kind of colonial mindset is one that it will wear its mark on us, no matter how embedded we are in our traditions, no matter how much this is our lives. Like every now and then, we will feel that kind of resistance. We will feel like, okay, like I am the one weirdo in this room, and
Or that
so,
you're, I was
or
going to say, or kind of to the earlier thing, or that you are just a charlatan.
literally, or the
Yeah.
oral charlatan, right? And so I think that having the fun and the play in it helps keep that enchantment alive in us, and being like it's even like regardless of what anyone else thinks, like even if I'm out here kind of capturing and channeling some of that energy by like the, you know, the witnesses that are observing this, I'm doing this in public in some way, like, and I'm playing with that, like I'm in control, like I have the attention, I'm going to transmute it and transform it into something else. And for that, that is the audacity, as we were saying earlier, it comes in with the humility actually of being like, and yet it's not just me doing this. I'm not the only one piecing all of reality together. It's, even though I may have had to take that office on to create this, like I'm also supported by all these spirits and nourished by this materia too.
I love that. Yes, I think that's wonderful. Because we do, like, we live inside of these spiritual ecologies. We live inside these networks of being, and I think it is really easy to be like, no, I'm the baddest bitch in the like in the woods, or like the witch is never afraid of the night because she's the scariest thing in it. Like, sure, but why is she scary? It's because there's a lot of behind her. Like, she's got a scary elk-headed beast standing up behind her. That's why she's scary.
Yeah,
and she allows herself to be educated. She allows herself to like move through these worlds. And I keep using feminine language, and I don't mean to, but it's just like in my brain because of colonization, as we have been talking about. But yeah, I think it's really it's fascinating to sit, like you said, in humility and allow these multiple voices, these multiple influences, multitudes of color and sound and all of it to craft something with you. And it does kind of go back to what Vanessa wrote about in the article about art, in that it should be pretty. Even those like simple things, they should be beautiful. They should look magical. And they will look that way. They will feel that way if you allow this flow to happen. And you just let yourself really be in it. Be the witch, be the thing, be the conduit, but like play with it. And like you said, have fun. The more fun you have, the more magical and more personal and more beautiful that thing is going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we need to take into consideration too as practitioners, is it's not just the equation of it all. It's also, do you have the spirit of it as a thing in and of itself?
Yeah. Like 3 sticks bound together with rope, like on a Blair Witch style, is still beautiful. You know, it's still deeply aesthetic.
Yeah.
It doesn't, yeah, as Key is wont to make everywhere he goes. But it is one of those things. I really love what you raised, Kamden. It's something that ultimately, that, you know, yes, in that moment we do really hype ourselves up to be like, I am literally putting the breath in this thing. But ultimately, like being in that community of spirits, like what makes a witch scary in my culture, like Avishitsa specifically, what makes her so monstrous and not human and not really like a, you know, a sorceress, but specifically this other than human being, is that she was changed by spirits, often against her consent. You know, it's never really pleasant, but she has familiars, you know, she has, you know, to use the kind of general language, like is, you know, scaffolded by a whole community of spirits that are now making the kinship ties more theirs. And, you know, you're still kind of in the middle somewhere, but not fully of one or the other. And it's that you can call on them. It's that there's family there. There is kinship. Like they will obey, and sometimes they call on you and you obey because now it's like you don't have a choice. You got to go with the wild hunt, and like that's that you don't get to sleep that night. And so it's one of those things that like what is absolutely like, it's not just that like you're this big bad powerful thing. It's like sure you have cunning, you have intelligence, you have power, like it grows for sure, but like it's largely that you're just in like you are the emissary at this point, you know, the human kind of avatar of a whole corpus of beings that, you know, you're in contact with. And it's their knowledge that is sometimes flowing through you. I say this a lot with my divination clients when I read Basu or Beans for them, which is sometimes a spirit will give you something, or like you'll get intuition and you'll be like, I should do this. And does it ultimately, at the end of the day, truly matter whether it was an independent being that told you that, an ancestor, it was your intuition that was just sharp that day, you picked up on some signals in the air? Like if the advice is accurate, if you didn't take that bus that day because it was a car crash, like if it got you out of a bad situation, if you held your tongue around your boss and realized and later on found that he was in a really bad mood, and like it ultimately is almost irrelevant unless the spirit really wants to claim, like because they want an offering and they will be like, I did that, like, and you can, maybe they're lying, who knows, you know, but like ultimately it could also be a cluster of urine, like the amniotic fluid of like 11 beings right now, and they are talking and you just overheard the gist of the conversation and got the point. And it also just may be you too, because you're a bunch of spirits in a body too, like that's And so I think that, I love how we started with like the, I am, Moses, I am Cyprian, I am Solomon, I baptize you, I do this, I'm Prometheus. And then also like, and then the mechanism by which that functioned was also just the fact that you've built an ecology around you, and you also were born into one, if whether you acknowledge it or not.
Yeah.
And
And
like,
that's that paradox,
yeah.
right? Like you are this conglomerate thing, you are Moses, you are Cyprian, like it's all existing comorbid all at one time. And like in some ways that is what makes us kind of monstrous and strange is that you are this conglomerate being. I think like one of the things that I really like to think about a lot is like, why is the witch considered monstrous? Like, why do they make this interesting monster trope? And what I've come to is that it really does come down to this idea of desire and how the witch is this being who has so much power to change reality, partially because of this like non-humanness, this multitudinous nature. They are legion, but also because a witch is also someone that allows themselves to just desire wholly and completely and without surcease. Like it's just like you are this font of desire itself. And so you become this thing that doesn't feel bad about desiring. You don't feel shame around desire. You don't feel guilt around desire, where we live in a culture that does. Desire is like one of the ultimate sins. And like being this being who has so much power and allows themselves to feel so much desire, so much heat and emotion around it, like that really is a monstrous thing in our society. Let's talk about that. Like, what is that?
I think
why are witches monstrous?
well, there's an interesting thing to explore there, because on one hand, I definitely see what you're saying and I agree with you. On the other hand, I think that in a largely secular, while pretending it's religious, materialist, capitalist society that a lot of us find ourselves in, there's a lot of unfettered, I don't even know if I would call it desire. I would call it unfettered hunger. There is unfettered covetousness and acquisition and acquisition and acquisition. Whereas, like, I think currently it seems like the ultimate goal within American society, for a lot of people at least, is the acquisition of wealth, period. And that is the sign of success. That's the sign of not necessarily and I'm not saying this is everyone, but I think that particularly when we look at the people pulling the levers, largely it is acquire, acquire, acquire. We're being run, our world is run by hungry ghosts and that just devour endlessly because nothing will ever be enough. So that is like this really heavily, almost like an unchecked desire in its own way. But I do feel like it is without purpose to some extent. I think that the witch desires a different world, a different reality for themselves, and ideally, and I mean, sure, the witch can also be power hungry. Most are, most are in some way, shape, or form. I would say for the most part, most witches that I know, though, like have a capacity where they could be filled. like it doesn't seem like an empty pit. I guess I don't know. It's an interesting thing because I've been thinking about this lately, particularly the unchecked greed and hunger of the world right now, and how the mark of success, of advancement, is literally just capital gain. Whereas it's just not for me. I think the desire that I often have is for the world to exist in a different way, and to again have that audacity to be like, well, I'm going to do something about this, right? And that I can do something about this. I can change this. I can change things for the better for me and for the people around me, and also do so in a way where it is kind of like what you were touching on, this unashamed way to have desire. Because I do think, particularly, I don't know, it depends. I mean, maybe this isn't true of everyone. I think that for a long period of my time, I was kind of given like the life situations that I was born into and things like that. I think a lot of people would have just been okay with being kind of where they were, their station in life, and just accepting it, as opposed to desiring something more and creating that. And I do credit witchcraft and magic with a huge part of that for me, right? Building a life that I actually at one point was told or didn't believe was really possible for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is just, that is like the crafting of desire into reality, and again, a certain type of an audacity. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm making some kind of sense. But because I think you're touching on really important things. But I think that I guess I'm trying to figure out what the difference is between the desire of the witch versus the desire of that which just wishes to consume, right?
And I think like the desire that I'm talking about is the erotic. So like an erotic desire, not sexual, but like erotic as creative, right?
Like
so
libidinal.
Yeah.
Like it's a libidinal desire that really turns back into the erotic as a source of creation. And
Yes.
so there is this sense of satiety that comes with a desire directly connected to the erotic. It's like this libidinal desire, right? And then I think there's a desire, like a type of desire or desire itself that becomes toxic. Well, we'll just use the word, or interrupted by shame and guilt that then becomes kind of like this pit, like you're talking about. Like it can't be filled because I can't allow myself to be filled by the desire that I'm feeling.
Right.
And I can't face the interruption honestly because I also can't really face the fact that in my desire is this kind of like sublimation and destruction of self and subjectivity. And so I can't face the loss of myself. And so and I can't face the loss of what I think that I am and what the society at large thinks that I should be. And so I get this interruption of desire. And so desire becomes this consuming thing that consumes me and everything around it, rather than being educated and informed by desire itself and like the shape of that, the shadow of it, and its direct connection to this creative impulse that allows me to shape realities through the mere act of wishing it to be so. Like I don't know, it's very interesting. I like thinking about desire. I like thinking about libido. I like thinking about why I feel scary. But like
Yeah. So many of the discussions that we often have in circles around witchcraft have been about like libidinal desire and being able to talk about it without it being labeled or boxed up or immediately like pathologized in a certain way.
Yes.
It's just like, yeah, because when you're in a community with a bunch of different spirits that are non-human, you're gonna have very strange desires. And it can be to have like a container where it's safe to just talk about it and be like, here's why is it so many witches always come back to cannibalism and sex and those other kinds of things and like wanting to merge and like I think it makes a lot perfect sense when you think about like what happens to witches as they become closer to their spirits and also like what kind of motifs they're going to be especially drawn to like necromantically. But ultimately I think that if you are taking seriously that you're part of you has been taken by spirits and changed, or birth omens, have kind of always precluded you towards the spirit world, and that the kinds of spirits you're in communication with are going to affect you. If you have a court that is deeply entrenched with good neighbors, you will have very particular predilections, and things will offend you a lot more and make you go like incredibly angry at the drop of a hat over certain things like littering, like or like other kinds of stuff. Like it can really change. And I'm just using an example of some people that I know, but like really the spirits that I mostly commune with absolutely shape my ideas of justice, my ideas of like what is right, what is fair, and that doesn't always come well into conflict. It can conflict often with how our actual legal systems work, and so I have to both like figure out like my desire to live among humanity, and as in to have because I'm still human, to live a human life and to be in community with people where conflict resolution has to take place, and we have to kind of actually talk about our feelings and not just assume things and be like they were always jealous of me all along and I'll never talk to them again. Actually really talk to people, but at the same time honor and not shame and not suppress and not alienate these other desires that are also burgeoning, and to have the space to talk about them and to see how does that intersect with your sexuality, your gender, like inevitably the ways that it will play on your experience and as a person in this world who is perceived in various different ways. I think that the more, if we can create containers that are honest and open about being like, I just want to talk about this, its fantasies, its feelings, its intensities, because they will get worse, as in my experience, unless you are able to talk about them. Because then there will be like I think the pride or the ego comes in. It's just like, well, I'm going to find a way to make it burst out somewhere.
Right.
And so it's but it's also good relationships. I often think about our very good friend, mutual friend, Jesse Hathaway Diaz, is always him, hammering home to so many of us, like people skills or spirit skills. Like you're not going to be good at talking to
Yes.
spirits if you can't talk to people, and you're not going to be
100%.
able to be talking to students or clients if you can't talk to people. Like if you get mad at the drop of a hat and just decide everyone is upset with you, over nothing, and that they were always jealous all along. Like how are you ever going to maintain friendships with spirits who are invisible, often,
Mhm.
and whom you have to struggle to sometimes perceive? And so you can project so much onto them, right? And so I think that ultimately, like these discussions of desire is also like it has to be polyvalent. It can be contradictory. Absolutely, it often is, right? I think Freudian psychoanalysis has taught us that, but it can't just be like I want to live an authentic life, and I don't even know what that looks like for me yet. And maybe I'll find it out. I'll figure it out in the journey, But right now, it's not about plotting like an endpoint. It's about getting to a place where my agency is increased, while my ability to, prosper in the communities and be a good person in them and lend to them is also increased. And that's always a balancing act. And I think that we talked a lot about magic that's, nasty as well as, beneficial today. And ultimately, like, there's no police, it's going to come in and be like, you can or can't do that. There's spirits that can be offended for sure. There's people whose feelings will be heartbroken. But ultimately, it's, can you sleep at the end of the day, and can you look at your spirits in the eyes and be like, I stand by what I did, and it's okay if other people wouldn't, but like in this moment, I had to intervene.
Yeah. And maybe that's something too, is like desire with integrity
Mm-hmm.
versus desire without. I think that's an interesting notion because I think that in a lot of like magical practices, part of what comes to pass is that you become more and more a being of integrity. I don't know, maybe not
Really.
everybody, but I
Not
think that
everybody, for sure. There's some incredibly powerful witches that are batshit, awful, terrible people, but incredibly effective witches.
Incredibly effective.
yeah,
They will.
Incredibly effective.
You can pay them to curse the person, and that person will come back and pay them to remove it, and that is their economy. Yeah.
Yeah.
that is fair. That is fair. Isn't
I,
that kind of integrity?
there's a, I mean, we all, I mean, there's no, it's, if we want to get into an idea whether there's a universal morality, right, or like value system. For me, I think it's quite possible. I mean, it's very easy for folks that are witched to go fully into, if we were not examining a lot of the things that we're just talking about, our desires, where our desires originate, how our desires can be explored and expressed in ways that are beneficial towards the fact that we're at least part human living a human experience, right? Because there are many ways that a desire can be satiated, right? Kind of like
Or
basically what we're saying.
sublimated.
Yeah, sublimated or
Mm.
satiated, and then the ways that can end up bursting out if we're not truly examining those things, and the ways that those desires can also be weaponized against us, either magically or by spirits who just want to have a good time or who are upset with us. And so there's a lot there to explore. And I think that there are some witches that are incredibly good at magic, but have no intention or desire, or don't really care so much about like also like, but I also kind of want to live a good, happy, healthy life in this human body while I'm here too. You know what I mean? And so, I don't think being a good person is required to be effective as a witch. However, I try to. I try for my own sake, and because I would like to live a happy life. I try to balance all of that, right? And for me, I tend to function from this more kind of three souls model of being, and that ties us to, the upper world, the middle world, and the underworld. But within that, again, there's a whole ecosystem of spirits. Those are just three of the primary ones that I engage with in this way. But it is about being able to align with and ally all of those in a way which is hopefully productive for all parts of us, so that we can function in a way which lends us towards greatest expression of self,
Yeah.
ideally, and that our magic is protecting us, providing for us, but also ideally radiates out in a way which is ideally beneficial for the other people in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
That we're not just kind of a toxic cloud to the things around us.
I also I don't know, part of me wants to go back to this idea of integrity and divorce it from morality and ethics. and reconsider it as like an internal balance, like an internal balance of the compass. Like I've stacked my bones beneath me, and so like it doesn't necessarily have to be like good or bad people,
Yeah.
but like what is integrity? Like what in your world, like what action is in alignment to your integrity? Like what is that? And that still allows room for people who are like, I don't know, wicked witches, like riding around on whatever Vespas or whatever. I
Yes, a
forget
Vespa witch gang. I want to see
those evil Vespa witches.
that. Oh, damn! It's Brunhilde and the Vespa girls.
And the Venga Boys.
And the
Yeah.
big boy.
taking the Venga Boys by Vespa to Vespers. And
Hey, now we're orthodox thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that that's a valid exploration, is what is integrity within our craft, and what is integrity in relation to ourselves, our own compass, but also to the spirits that we are pacted to, and what does integrity look like in relation to, I guess, where we exist in our own kind of ecosystems.
I mean, yeah, like you can lose the spirit's, trust and respect if you don't defend yourself, and you're like, wait, I'm not gonna look for a fight right now, and they're like, well, I'm a warrior, and you just got attacked, and now I see you as because you're not putting up a front, now I see you as not really worthy of my time. And so it's I think a lot about like with the culture aspect of spirits, because they have their cultures, they have their societies, they have their own ways of thinking, and of course it will clash with yours. And so sometimes like it's you mentioned earlier, like letting a spirit of death, or letting a spirit of like has a particular necrotic capacity, like take away something, or like kill the poverty, kill the loneliness. Sometimes, with warrior spirits, they need a war. And like if your life is calm, you got to figure out what they're patrolling for. And so it's about it. There's also that kind of jigsaw aspect of like integrity also in terms of standing by your own self and having boundaries with spirits and like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't care what you think. Like I'm putting my foot down. I'm the sorcerer here. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But also in being able to be like, let's find a way where if I've integrated you into my court or, my spirit community, that you find your place like in this, and like maybe that is preemptive, maybe that is also conciliatory, or someone who becomes an advisor as well. Like I do think a lot about I have my own particular set of moral principles. I don't assume at all that they are universal, but I do think that they have to be flexible in the sense of adaptable to the communities we actually take place in, and the communities I'm using to include spirit communities as well. So like, and that is okay. Like the person who's friends with everyone is friend of nobody, right? And so it is like you're gonna of course ruffle feathers. Like not everyone will agree, and including among spirits, and that is completely fine. That is how you find your tribe, right? Not to calcify and just become ringified by people who always say yes to you, but more in the sense that like, okay, we can actually create a community here because we can agree on things and we can create principles from which we can build. And so in that case, like Matt, like just absolutely, like the stories of like the most powerful witches from my culture are never necessarily the people who are like have the love and light in their hearts, right? It's the people who aggressively pursued power and became really good at it, because it's in the way that someone can become an excellent martial artist and use that power for competition and for sportsmanship to defend other people or to just fuck people up. And keeping in mind cursing, like it's easy to stab someone with a knife. It's hard to use it as a scalpel for surgery. Like
Right.
cursing isn't that hard. Like, and so ultimately, I think it's a reminder that like the magic that's really impressive is often the one that requires a lot of finesse. And I think we've been kind of talking about that today. Is that for me, like spiritual integrity comes at the end of the day as an oral charmer is like, can I live with what my tongue has said? And it's fine. People can assume that you lied, or people can invent that you lied, or people can like maybe project a lot of meaning onto that it wasn't intentional. But like, did my tongue say what was true to my heart? And if not, how do I turn it around? How do I clarify? And how do I do better? And so in that way, like it is also being able to tell my spirits, like, you can trust me because I've kept my word. And that word is the sacredness that both guarantees you'll get your offering at the end of the day, and also is the one that stands up for my friends when they need it most. And I don't see those things as inherently different.
That is beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. Again, spirit skills are people skills, and people skills are spirit skills. Integrity is a part of that, right? Like, like, can you keep your promises? Do you stand by your word? Are you, do you have that?
Absolutely. Guys, this has been amazing. I just want to say thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love how we started with dolls and we went into a very beautiful ethical conversation as well as metaphysical conversation on the nature of, what we are. But really, I think it comes down to we love magic, right? And so, of
We love
course, we're going to
magic.
love
Yeah.
thinking about it. And we hope that, folks listening are, who love magic like us, just give yourself permission to play. And it's okay, we all fuck up, we all make mistakes, none of us are perfect, none of us, are without regrets. But I think that who we are is forged not by who we were in our worst moments, but who we try to be in our best and somewhere in the middle.
Exactly.
And that's what we can keep trying for.
Yes. I love that.
Very
Yeah.
well said.
I think that's the difference between a friend, right, and someone who's not a friend. Is to anyone else, you were the time that you made yourself into an ass, but like to a friend, they remember who you were in your best, and they believe you can do that again.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that's beautiful.
Well, thank you guys so much. So just a quick reminder, folks, you can find Matt at spiritusarcanum.com. The Instagram is also spiritus_arcanum. Check out everything there. There's a link tree. We all have link trees, but because Instagram kills us instantly if we dare spell it out. We have to do the little like emojis, but they are there. And Kamden can be found at Heart and Vine Apothecary. The Instagram is heart_n_vine_apothecary, and the link tree is there as well. And please do check out both of their books. We yapped about Matt's, and rightly so, many a times, including afterwards in the server and in other podcast episodes. We referenced it. Check out Soling the Effigy, and be sure to also check out Kamden's on Pins and Needles, a witch's book of puppetry and figure magic, which I wanted to point out is currently on Amazon.com. It's number 12 in doll crafts, which I did click.
Yeah.
I did click on that category, and it is among great company.
I love it. One of my greatest accomplishments in life is that for a week, my book was number 1 above the American Girls history book.
Yo,
hell yes.
Hell yeah.
I beat all those girls. I beat them all.
They were snatched.
Don't do it, little girl.
It's a very different type of doll.
So Kamden's book. This is a new edition of a book that they previously published, and it's such a great book. I was so excited to do the foreword for it, and in part, I was like, "Hey," because Kamden has some such amazing insights into puppetry, doll magic, working with these things, and definitely, his work also helped inspire elements of my own. And so it's just really cool that it's out there in a new form, updated, and I think that, go get it, and then get my book and have them together, and then you can become a master of puppetry and effigy making.
Yeah, litter books kiss.
On on the bookshelf next to each other.
Let them hold hands on the shelf together.
Absolutely. Well, Kamden, we'll put it on our list for our Patreon, like book clubs. We do a book club every month, so we'll see where people are trying to start the steal as opposed to stop the steal for the polls that we have to try and talk about Battle of Fates, like the Korean divination show right now. But once we get through that next month, maybe we'll see if we can get yours on there.
That'd be so cool.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. Getting a little bit into our music choices for today, all 4 of us have a track. Mine, just to kind of start us off, is one of Key's favorites. I thought I would bring. Actually, I don't think we've even included. Have we done any correspondence yet? I don't think so. But it's "Puppet Loosely Strung" by Correspondence, which is also a very sexy song.
It is very, very sexy. The Correspondence is just a sexy duo in general.
Yeah. All right, Key, what's yours?
Yeah, and my Akashic record for today is something a little
nasty.
You can do with Poppets, which is the Atrax remix of Hetzel Roll by the AAS.
Yeah. Amazing. Kamden, what's yours?
Mine is Bach to the Future by Levi Strachman. He is the embodiment of being a master of something and still learning how to play with it. He does like classical piano, but also does like house music inside of it. It is fantastic.
Oh, so good. And before we got on recording, we were even talking about raves and house music and techno. Well, seems to follow us like a shadow on this podcast. I love it. Yeah, amazing.
Man, oh man.
And Matt, the sexiest of them all, I think, was yours.
Oh, I thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I chose Lose Your Soul by Dead Man's Bones, which is I don't know. I wish I had something more to say about it other than it's a great song. It's the entire atmosphere. It's a whole vibe. It's an entire vibe. And just give it a listen, as well as the rest of Dead Man's Bones tracks if you're not familiar. Um, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so, so much. And I think this, in the spirit of like maximalism, I think we talked about like when you overcomplicate things. In the spirit of not doing that, today's License to Depart is maybe the shortest we've ever had. I think usually we have a prayer, or it's like an Orphic hymn, or it'll be like something from a grimoire, or like an oral charm, or like the Nine Herbs charm or something. I think it was recently, or excerpts of things. Today, Camden, would you like to explain? As it was your suggestion.
Yeah, tonight's License to Depart is actually from one of my favorite cartoons, Star versus the Forces of Evil.
Hell yeah.
And I think this also kind of perfectly embodies how fun doll magic should be.
Amazing. You know what? Do you want to read it for us? And usually it's Key, but I think we gotta
I
add
want to
your
hear
whimsy
Key
into it.
do it. I
All
want
right,
to
all
hear
right.
Key's deep,
All right.
deep voice say this.
All right, do it. Okay, are we doing? Okay, yes.
Baloo Bali, Baloo Balo. I let you go, I let you go, I let you go.
I think what's most important is at the end of the day that we need to remember to protect the dolls.
Amen. There we go.
Protect
Action.
the dolls.
Absolutely.